Which is better, an AVR or separates? This is a question that gets asked and debated constantly. And the argument basically comes down to, is the added benefit of separates worth the extra cost? I don't know that there are very many people who are arguing that an AVR is superior to separates, generally speaking. However, the debate seems to be, well, yes, separates are better, but how much? And is it worth paying the extra money? Now, a little bit of background. An AVR is an audio-video receiver. And this is a box that does both audio-video processing as well as audio amplification. So when a signal comes in from an external source, whether it be a Blu-ray player or Apple TV, the content comes into the receiver. The receiver processes the audio, it decides which channels to send which sounds to, and then it sends that information over to the amplifier section, where the amplifiers then power the speakers for each of those channels. Well, when you go separates, those two functions are separated. So you have a processor that receives the external content. It receives the content and then it processes which sounds need to go to which speakers. And then it sends those signals out, the pre-outs, whether it be RCA pre-outs or XLR outs, out to external amplifiers. So the amplification is handled from a separate device. So in my tiny theater here, which is a 7.2.4 Dolby Atmos setup, I have been running the Onkyo TX-RZ50. This is an AVR, so it does both processing and amplification. So there's something that I haven't mentioned, which is kind of a middle of the road approach. So you have full AVR, you have full separates, but then in the middle, you have kind of a hybrid of the two. And that's what I've done here with my Onkyo TX-RZ50. This AVR has RCA pre-outs. So it has the ability to, rather than send the information to the internal amplifiers, it can send that information out, the pre-outs, the RCA pre-outs, out to external amplifiers, which is what I've done here. So all of my channels are being powered by the Outlaw Audio external amplifiers. So this is kind of a middle of the road approach. So this Onkyo TX-RZ50, this is, in my opinion, one of the best values, if not the best value for an AVR, because you can get it for less than $1,000 and it has full pre-outs and it has direct live. So I've been very, very happy with this AVR. But the question that I'm going to explore and answer today is, would full separates be better than what I have here? And to do that, I have my Anthem AVM70. This is a full dedicated processor with full XLR balanced outputs as well as RCA outputs. This Anthem AVM70 does processing only. It has no internal amplifiers. So it has to have external amplifiers connected to it. So I'm going to connect the Outlaw Audio amplifiers. One of them is a 5-channel, the other is a 7-channel. And I will be using 11 of those 12 channels for amplification. So the first step is I have to remove my Onkyo TX-RZ50, which is all connected up here, but thankfully, it's actually not going to be that difficult to disconnect it all, because I just have a few HDMI cables and then a whole bunch of RCA cables plugged into the pre-outs. And all I have to do is pull those out, swap those over to the Anthem AVM70. Okay, I've got my Anthem AVM70 all plugged in and all connected up. I gotta say, it was quite easy and straightforward to swap out these two receivers. It was not difficult getting back in there behind the rack. This rack actually makes it really easy to access equipment. It slides really well on the carpet. I actually made a whole video about this cool rack. because I've been so happy with it. It's like perfect for this room, and it made swapping out the Onkyo and the AVM70 so easy. Now, one thing I did do that took a little bit extra time this time, but now that it's done, it'll make switching it even easier in the future, is I labeled all of the cables. I basically have all of the RCA cables just kind of Velcroed together into kind of a big fat pigtail. And now they're all labeled, so when I swap back to the Onkyo, it'll just be, it'll only take like a minute or two. It's so easy. Now, I didn't mention this previously, but the reason why I have my Anthem unused right now is because in my main theater downstairs, I actually have the Trinnov Altitude 16 installed, and I'm demoing that for the next little while. I have it on loan from Trinnov, and so because I removed my Anthem from my main theater, it's just kind of been sitting in the closet, and this is the perfect chance to try it out here in my tiny theater. So now that I've got it in and it is installed, it is time to calibrate it, get everything all set up. And the way I'm going to do that is I am going to use the ARC Genesis, Anthem Room Correction Genesis program and microphone that comes with the Anthem. And I'm going to use that to calibrate everything. Now, another thing that I want to mention is that I am running 2 subs here in my tiny theater. And previously with my Onkyo, I was using a mini DSP to time align them and to correct for phase, etc. But the Anthem AVM70 actually has dual independent subwoofer outs. So I'm able to connect 2 subwoofers, and it is able to control each of them independent of each other. And Anthem has a really cool phase alignment tool that comes with the ARC Genesis to get the subs all dialed in. So I'm able to remove the mini DSP completely and just have the 2 subs directly connected to the Anthem processor. So I've got the Anthem ARC Genesis microphone set up here in the main listening position. And this microphone, if you'll notice, is very similar. It has almost the identical form factor to the UMic 1. There is one key difference, however. This microphone is directional. And thankfully, they do put a sticker on it that says, this dot faces towards the room, the front of the room. So it has this little dot on the front, and you just make sure that it is pointed as close to the front of the room as you can get. I usually just eyeball it, get it pretty close. And then you set this part, this is the microphone, this is where it collects the sound. You set that as close to where your ears are going to be as possible. You also notice that I reclined the seat, and so I got it in my comfortable position where I'm sitting, and then I placed the microphone right there where my ears are. And now I'm going to hook up my laptop and run the Anthem room correction program. Well, guys, I spoke too soon. I was so pleased with myself. I was so happy with how easy it was to swap out the Onkyo and install the Anthem. It was just a simple matter of just swapping over some RCA cables and a couple of HDMIs, and I was in business. I was so happy. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, that was too easy. It can't be that easy. Turns out I should have listened to that voice in the back of my head, because here's what happened. I got it all swapped over. I ran ARC Genesis, the Anthem room correction. I got it all done. I did the phase alignment calibration with the 2 subs. I did it all. And then after I uploaded the file and I went to demo it, I wanted to hear how it sounds. It was at that moment I realized that there was a faint hum coming from the speakers. I'm like, oh, no. And so I turned everything off. The hum went away. I turned it back on. The hum came back. Not good. Now, a little hiss, like, and when I say a little, I mean, I have a pretty low tolerance, so the hiss has to be pretty low. I can tolerate that because you're just naturally going to get that with amplifiers. The better the amplifier, the lower the hiss, right? But I can tolerate that, especially when it's not audible from the main listening position. But this was not a hiss. This was an electrical hum. And it wasn't super loud, but it was audible, and I could hear it from the main listening position. I'm like, shoot. So I knew what I had to do. I knew what the solution was. The hum came about because I had cut corners and just swapped out the RCA cables from the Onkyo and into the Anthem. What I should have done to do it correctly from the beginning was I should have completely removed the RCA cables and installed the XLR cables. But I didn't want to do that because that was going to be more work. And as a result, because I cut corners, I created like an extra 2 hours worth of work. Because now I have to swap out the XLR cables and then I have to rerun the entire room correction over again. Now, I've already done the XLR cables at this point. I've already swapped them all out. I pulled the rack out, swapped them one by one. That's all done. But now I have to go back and rerun the Anthem room correction. So I'm going to do that now for the second time today, and then I'll finally get to hear it. I finally got it all done. I got the Anthem AVM70 completely installed and calibrated. This day has not gone the way I anticipated it would. I was literally, just sitting down to run the calibration for the second time. I opened up my laptop. I plugged in the microphone. I opened Arc Genesis. I hit the next button or whatever, launch Arc. And in that moment, I heard this loud roaring sound just outside the window. I'm like, what is happening? I look out the window. My neighbors are having their carpets cleaned, and there's a big van parked in their driveway, and it was making a lot of racket. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But it was lunchtime anyways, so I broke for lunch. By the time I was done, they were gone, and I was able to proceed with the calibration, and now I have the Anthem completely installed, and I was able to demo a number of movie scenes and music, and I have some thoughts on separates versus a hybrid separate AVR. So, which clips did I watch? So I previously made a video where I did a comparison between 5.1.4 and a 7.1.4. I was checking to see how much of an impact the rear surround speakers had. So if you haven't seen that video, go check that one out. And so in doing that, I watched a number of clips. I watched, obviously, the race scene from Ready Player One. I watched a scene from Deepwater Horizon, Ford versus Ferrari. What was the other one? I can't even remember now. But anyways, I watched those scenes. And so those were all fresh in my mind from having watched them with the Onkyo. And so now I watched them with the Anthem. Here are my thoughts. I do believe there is a slight increase in sound clarity, meaning distinct sounds that are placed throughout the room. I do think that there is an improvement, that there's an increase in that experience. But here is my takeaway from having done this A/B test. I think that if you get a capable AVR and connect it to capable external amplifiers, I think at that point you are pretty darn close to what you get with a true processor like the AVM70. I did not hear enough of a difference from the Onkyo to the AVM70 to warrant the increase in price. They are MSRP. The Anthem AVM70 is 4 times the cost of the Onkyo TX-RZ50. 4 times the price. When you're looking purely at sound quality, for me personally, again, this is a personal decision. This is a personal conclusion that you have to come to for yourself. But for me personally, I think that the Onkyo TX-RZ50, when connected to external amplifiers, gets you to a level that is pretty amazing. And yes, the Anthem AVM70 is a notch above, but is a notch above worth the 4 times the price. Now, that is speaking strictly about the sound quality. There are other factors to consider, especially with this Anthem AVM70. So, like I mentioned, I did that video where I did a test between 5.1.4 and 7.1.4. And to do that with the Onkyo, I had to first, I already had it configured for 7.1.4, so I already had it all calibrated and everything. And so I watched some clips with that. And then I had to go in and erase all those settings and then switch over to 5.1.4, rerun the calibration and do everything, and then watch those same clips. With the Anthem AVM70, you are able to set up multiple profiles, and you can pick and choose which speakers you want to include in those various profiles. So I have a 7.2.4 profile. I have a 2-channel profile. I set up a 5.1 or 5.2.4 profile. And then I also set up a 7.2 profile. This would be just the bed layer speakers, so no height speakers. So I'm actually looking forward to doing some testing with that to see what happens and how it sounds with no height speakers. And with the Anthem AVM70, you are able to very easily from your remote switch between those profiles. It's so easy. So you can, you can watch a scene, go back, switch to the other profile, and watch the exact same scene back to back, and you'll be able to listen to hear what differences you're going to hear. The other thing about the Anthem versus the Onkyo is that the Anthem AVM70 will process 15 channels, whereas the Onkyo TX-RZ50 will only process 11 channels. So with the Anthem, you can actually do your front sound stage, and then you can do wides, sides, and surrounds, and then 6 height speakers, for a total of 15 channels plus the 2 independent subwoofers. Whereas the Onkyo will only do 11 channels of processing. And yes, it does have multiple sub outs, but they're not independent. So when in the calibration, it's basically just, they're both connected to the same output. So that's another thing that explains why the price difference between the Anthem and the Onkyo is that the Anthem is just so much more capable, and you can build a much larger theater with it. So there are other things to consider besides just, pure sound quality. The other thing is, doing the calibration with Arc Genesis, I was reminded of how much I like Anthem's room correction software, Arc Genesis. I really, really like that. Now, I do like Dirac Live. It's great on the Onkyo. No question. I like the results. I like how flexible it is. I like that. But dang, Arc Genesis is just so slick, and it's so easy. And so there are other things to consider. The other thing is with Anthem, so there's 2 different Anthems. I have the AVM70. There's also the AVM90, which is a step up from this, and it's not quite double the price of the AVM70, but it's pretty close. So I question, given how good the AVM70 sounds, I question how good the AVM, or how much better the AVM90 sounds over the 70. I'd have to hear them back to back. I would be curious to hear how much extra sound improvement there is making that jump. So anyways, that's my takeaway. And I do want to emphasize here that the importance of external amplifiers. I really do feel like the external amplifiers paired with an AVR makes a big difference. If you're using all of the internal amps, you know, when you're driving so many speakers, I mean, I'm driving 11 speakers here in this theater. And so if you're trying to drive those all off of internal amplifiers, that's a bit much. And also, I should have mentioned this earlier, with the Onkyo TX-RZ50, it actually has 9 channels of internal amplification. Even if I wanted to use the internal amplifiers here in this theater with the Onkyo, I would still have to have at least a 2-channel external amplifier to get all 11 channels. So my thought is, get the TX-RZ50. It's a great value at less than $1,000 for that. And then pair it with some really good external amps and you will be very, very happy. So hopefully this video has been useful and informative. It's certainly been interesting to me. Ever since I've gotten the Onkyo, I've always wanted to test it head to head versus the Anthem. And now I'm able to do that. And it's been very interesting. So thanks for watching.